Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to do Week 9 power rankings for SEC football. A reminder, always looking for sponsors, caroline.smith at southeastern14.com. Let's get right into the power rankings. We start at 14, where Vanderbilt had a bye week and remains 14th, although the Commodores almost could have moved up by virtue of how bad some of these other teams looked. Blake?
Yeah, bottom of the league right now. Not
Ooh.
exactly shining, I would say, but that's what you expect. That's why they're at the bottom of the league, right? You've got Vanderbilt's lost 6 in a row. You've got another team that's lost 6 in a row. You got a team that's lost 4 in a row, 3 in a row, and so forth. So, yeah, I don't think the Commodores are moving up this week, no matter what happened elsewhere. So,
Yeah, number 13, South Carolina. Boy, did the Gamecocks look bad in Columbia, Missouri, and entered or exited the game more banged up even than they entered it, and they were pretty banged up to begin with.
and you just think about the difference in momentum if they win that Florida game. I'm not saying they're going to beat Missouri, but it's just different confidence at that point. And yeah, to lose that game the way they did, and then to have to come out and play just a red hot Missouri team, not a great setup for the Gamecocks, and the injuries, continue.
Number 12, the Arkansas Razorbacks. We could have had a pillow fight for this 13 spot, I think. We gave it to South Carolina, put Arkansas 12, and Arkansas becomes the first team to fire a coordinator or a coach in season in the SEC. So the Razorbacks have that going for them.
We did. You guys talked about that on another video that's up this morning. So you haven't checked that out. That went up early. Reaction to the Dan Enos firing, as offensive coordinator. And yeah, I mean, I mentioned a minute ago. Isn't it wild? Who would have ever guessed that if you had to pick two teams that would have 6-game losing streaks at this point in the season, it would be Vanderbilt and Arkansas. That's just, I know Arkansas fans don't want to hear that, but that is the state of where things are. And hey, you look at the upcoming schedule, right? I mean, this thing don't get much easier. They get a bye, but they got to go to Florida, Auburn, they get Missouri still. Like, this thing is, it's not, that was just a brutal game. What else do you say? So,
Blake, with the stage of the season where sometimes you don't have to do much, sometimes it just don't be terrible or maybe be less terrible than some other teams around you. That is how Mississippi State winds up in the 11th spot after a thrilling 7-3 win in Fayetteville on Saturday.
Yeah, I really don't know what to say. Like, that was, I just did not see any game like that whatsoever coming. Like, I would have thought, even if Mississippi State wins, right, I would have felt like it'd been a high scoring type game where, these two teams just traded blows and found some offensive firepower. But boy, that was not the case there. So yeah, I mean, hey, credit to Mississippi State. They won 2 games in a row, and now they got a pretty tough slate to finish the season. At Auburn, they got Kentucky, A&M, and Ole Miss. So,
all right, I feel like this is where teams start to separate a little bit. We've got Auburn at 10. The Tigers still don't have an offense, particularly a passing game. There's a running game there, but the defense continues to be pretty good, and that's good enough for 10 this week.
yeah, I mean, I guess there is something to be said just about hanging around and being in games at this point. I mean, that's like I said. I mean, they did it against Georgia, they do it against Ole Miss, and that's, I guess, about all you can ask for, right, in terms of response after losing at LSU the way they did. And so, yeah, I mean, you talk about way schedule's set up. I look at Auburn. I feel like this is probably a team. I don't know how much further they're going to move up based on the 9 teams ahead of them that I really can't see dropping far at all. But, like, look, they get Mississippi State up next at home. They got to go to Vanderbilt. They go to Arkansas. Those are all, winnable games. I'm going to call them easy games, but they're all very winnable. So, chance to build some momentum here, even though they've lost 4 in a row. But you've seen some good, I think, from this Auburn team, if they can just, find enough to be able to outduel some of these teams that we know maybe have a bit more offensive firepower right now.
Kentucky at 9. And by the way, Auburn was a pretty easy 10. Hard to really justify Auburn ahead of the few teams in front of it, or hard to justify Auburn any differently than ahead of the teams in front of it or behind the teams that are in front of Auburn, if that makes sense. Probably not. But anyway, we got Kentucky at 9. The Wildcats have just looked awful the last 2 weeks that we have seen them play, getting blown out by Georgia and then no showing for the second half of the Missouri game. But Kentucky also did some good work earlier in the season. That's part of its DNA. And so Kentucky at 9.
Yep. And I mean, this is the game, right? It's all about. I mean, this is a crucial game for the Cats against Tennessee coming up this week, and yeah, because we know what's still left on the schedule in terms of Tennessee, Alabama, at Louisville. Those other 2 road trips in there to Mississippi State and South Carolina. So yeah, we'll see what the bye week came up with for the Cats because they need to get right in a hurry here, I think.
For lack of a better idea, Texas A&M at 8.
That's always what you want to hear if you're an A&M fan. We don't know where to put you, so we're just going to throw you right here at number 8. But I mean, look, they've what? I mean, I just think it's, again, you look at the teams in front of them, and sure, you can maybe justify a couple teams there, but you're probably, you're not going to move them ahead of the top 5 by any means. And then look, they've lost 2 games in a row, right? The close games, Alabama and Tennessee, nothing to be, that upset about in terms of, you felt like you had opportunities, yet it does feel like missed opportunities at this point. And so I think they'll be just fine moving forward because they get South Carolina this weekend, and then you still got those 2 pivotal games, and I'm going to have to go to Ole Miss, have to go to LSU, but I don't think the Aggies are as bad as number 8. The problem is, like you said, it's just I don't know where else you put them.
It's justifying how you move them in front of other teams, including the one just in front of them, Tennessee, which beat the Aggies a couple weeks ago. Now, Tennessee had a disastrous second half at Tuscaloosa. I still think there's a good ball team in here. We'll find out at Kentucky this weekend. Loser, that one doesn't feel good about things, but I'll take the Vols at 7 just by virtue of results so far, and which will make sense as we go forward.
Yep, the old loser leaves town match here for all you wrestling aficionados. Tennessee and Kentucky, I think, is there's going to be some fans leaving town after this one, whoever loses. But yeah, I mean, like you said, what else can you say? I mean, first half could almost have not gone any better, and then the second half was just the complete opposite. And so, just it's not easy to put it all together, when you play Alabama for an entire 4-quarter stretch. But Tennessee did it for a couple, and so, like you said, it's at least there. It's there. But they're gonna again have this is the toughest part of the schedule we've been talking about. Start off well against A&M, getting a win, but still having to go to Kentucky, Missouri, Georgia at home in there. And so, yeah, this is where you got to put 4 quarters together. It's not 2's not going to do it against this kind of slate. So,
number 6, Florida, again, kind of hard to position Florida ahead of any of the teams in front of it or behind any of the teams behind it by virtue of beating Tennessee. And I know Kentucky's sitting there at 9 going, hey, wait, we beat you guys. But if we do that for everybody, we end up with a mess. It just seemed to make the most sense to have Florida at 6.
Yeah, Florida has more momentum than Kentucky right now, coming off two straight wins. And like we said, just getting that win at South Carolina was huge, even though, comes by 2 points. It's still just for your psyche and what that team needed. It was significant. So, yeah, had a nice off week, and, your reward is Georgia. And I mean, there's no question in my mind that one of the teams, out there, top 2, top 3, top 5, whatever you want to put it in, toughest remaining schedule. Florida Gators going to be right in there with Georgia. Arkansas, which, doesn't look as intimidating as it would have, but at LSU, at Missouri, Florida State, still to go.
We have got 3 1-loss teams in the SEC, one of which is the Missouri Tigers. They are the lowest ranked of the 1-loss teams, coming off a basically dismantling of South Carolina. Missouri continues to, I think, be about as consistent as any team in the conference week in and week out. I think hard to argue the Tigers anywhere, certainly below number 5, and probably hard to argue them ahead of here given what's happened with our team at number 4.
Yeah, I mean, if you thought this was a fluke, like it's not. I think it's pretty clear at this point. Missouri's for real. I think it took some people longer to get on the bandwagon than others, but yeah, I think it's pretty obvious at this point. Like you said, just came out and dismantled South Carolina, and that's what you want to see from a good team is go out and take advantage of those weaknesses on the other side. And Missouri did that, and now I get a week off and get ready for that. I mean, it's a significant game at Georgia because, again, we think about just what it means for the SEC title race and all that. I'm really looking forward to that one. So
LSU at number 4. But let me ask you this: if we're playing everybody on a neutral field this week, and you're just saying who do you least want to face right now, LSU might be number one.
That's the thing, right? It's like power rankings, I guess the way our staff composite rankings always come together, it's usually just a mix of all right, record and again, sort of where a team is overall versus maybe just looking at it, in a smaller sample size. And like you said, I think LSU could beat anybody in the country when they're playing as well as they can play offensively. Defensively, maybe some questions, although as we know, hey, it's looked a little bit better. I know Auburn, not the greatest offensive bunch, but they give up 18 there. They blank Army here, and now they get the week off to get ready for the game of the year potentially. At Alabama. So yeah, LSU at 4 when you could absolutely justify them being, a couple spots higher. I think just based on how good they are offensively, and we've said that before, you could put them against anybody, and they're going to have a chance just because of what they can do on offense.
Well, and of course, it's not just what have you done for me lately. It's body of work, and Ole Miss, our number 3 team, did beat LSU head to head. Ole Miss has still lost just one game, and some of those wins are starting to look respectable. I mean, the Tulane has lost one time. I'm not going to say Ole Miss has got a super loud resume, but it's done some quality things in a league where some teams have failed to rack up a lot of significant wins.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to win games. That's all they've done, right? Except for the Alabama game, they just won games. And, sure, some of them have been close, but in the SEC, you'll take close wins over losses of any kind. And so Ole Miss just keeps finding ways to win. And again, that's what it comes down to is, hey, whether it's a shootout type game against LSU, whether it's kind of having to grind some things out a little bit against an Arkansas or an Auburn, they always seemingly find a way, except for that Alabama game. So, yeah, I think this is absolutely justified. And, again, kind of the upcoming schedule for them sets up pretty nicely here for the Rebels. So,
number 2, Alabama. A lot of the computers have got Alabama ahead of Georgia now. It just can't go there yet by one loss, and by virtue of Georgia being the defending national champion and having not lost a game, for lack of a better idea. Look, I think we're gonna find out in the end. We're either going to get Georgia, Alabama, or Georgia, LSU. But for now, it's Alabama 2, and by default, Georgia, which had a bye week, number 1.
Yep, as usual. These two sitting right here at the top, kind of carved out these spots. I just think it's hard to knock them off there at this point. But of course, that could all change on Saturday, November the 4th, given the 2 matchups we're going to have there, right? So, yeah, that will kind of be the defining part since Alabama and LSU both have the week off. We will see some movement perhaps of some sort, depending on how those 2 games unfold then, like we said, with Alabama hosting LSU and, the Georgia Missouri game the following week. So, yeah, going to be very interesting. Excuse me. That's not the following week. That's that's November 4th as well. Right. So, yeah. So it's a huge setup there in terms of not only our power rankings, but more importantly, perhaps, although I don't know, college football playoff. I think our power rankings could be just as important as that. So,
yeah, well, we're tracking the playoff. Well, that's going to be an episode on our daily show this week. Not sure which day it'll be, but hit the subscribe button and hit your notifications, and you'll find out. We will compare all the SEC teams compared to the other ones in playoff contention, break down what's ahead, what's been banked, all those things. Basketball content coming soon. Goodness, we're 2 weeks away from basketball. Can't wait for that. Was at SEC Media's this week and enjoyed my time down in Birmingham. Anyway, lots of sports content coming up here soon at Southeastern 14. Hope you're here for it. He is Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. Thanks for watching us here at Southeastern 14, and we'll see you again soon.